Okay, can everyone hear me all right? Awesome. Was there anyone here at last year's session when I presented? Sasha, you were here. So relatively new audience. So just by means of introduction, Scott Morin, I'm a certified EOS implementer. I teach a system that is designed to create three outcomes for businesses. So one is having a clear vision for your organization, where you're going, how you're going to get there. The second is creating a culture of execution, accountability, so that you can realize that vision. And then the third is organizational health. So we start with the leadership team, and we get the leadership team functioning a little bit more organically, a little closer together. Because let's face it, leadership teams at times have elements of dysfunction. One of the reasons for that is, why did you get into a leadership position? Well, you were good at solving problems, you were good at executing. And so we've got 4 or 5 people at the leadership table that are hard driving executives, and sometimes they don't coexist as well as they could, right? So we call it vision, traction, healthy. So that is what we aim to do. And in terms of the system that I teach, there's 6 key components to the system. So there's the vision component, that is the strategy. What we'll do with strategy is we'll get the leadership team in a room, and we'll get the answers to 8 questions. So the 8 questions are: what are your core values? So what makes you as an organization? What's your core focus? So what's your mission? What's your raison d'etre? What's your why, if you will? And then what's your superior skill? That's question number 2. We call that core focus. Question number 3 is, where do you want to be 10 years from now? So we like to look just over the horizon, and we'll facilitate the answer to where we're going to be 10 years from now from a revenue perspective, perhaps, or from some other perspective, right? So how many locations? We want to be the PCL of whatever, like could be quantitative, could be qualitative. And the key here is just getting alignment at the leadership team level on the vision. And the vision has to be aspirational, and there has to be growth associated with it, because if growth is not associated with the vision, this just may not be the right system for you, because we have a philosophy that if you're not growing, you're dying. And growth is not greed, growth is stability, and there's lots of studies that'll support that. 4th question is marketing strategy. What is your ideal best fit customer? Just getting everyone around the table agreeing on, if there's 1 or 2 or 3 verticals that you go after, what is the ideal scenario where you really shine? And then what are the uniques? What makes you unique when you're competing with your competition? How do you take care of your customers? So what's your proven process from the moment that they lean towards you and say, I'm interested, to the moment that you complete the project, and maybe some sort of care and feeding element? And then do you have a guarantee? That's applicable in some scenarios, it's not applicable in others. And then from there we get into your 3-year picture. We build your 3-year revenue picture, we build your 3-year gross margin or EBITDA picture. We'll map it back to measurables. So in construction, it's often, if we're going to be a $20 million business, that means in our 3rd year of existence after this year, that means we need to be doing 5 $200,000 projects, 3 $50,000 projects, and then we have a bucket for all the rest. So that's what measurables are. I have a company that I work with that's a manufacturer of fire trucks, and so they'll break it right down to how many fire trucks do they need to create that year to make that number. They have a secondary business in police vehicles, and they do some work with Dwyer Hill, the Special Forces guys. So they have basically 3 measurables. And then what does the 3-year picture look like in terms of infrastructure, key employees, ERP applications, CRM optimization? So that's the next question. Then we get into your 1-year plan. We'll build out the next 90 days, and then we'll tackle your issues. So that is what the vision component is. People has to do with getting the right people in the right seats. And last year, I did a deep dive on people. And we'll review that quickly for some of you that didn't see the presentation. And then I'm going to spend some time on data. Issues has to do with solving problems effectively, getting to the root. Process has to do with documenting all your core processes. Insert your company name here. So it's the XYZ way. So what is it? How do you take care of your clients? How do you bring your people on? How do you go get leads? How do you close business? So just documenting all of that and making sure everyone's following it. And then the traction component is the execution. It's just the idea that you want to meet every year to do annual planning. You want to meet every 90 days to look back on the quarter and then chart your way forward for the next quarter. And then you want to meet every week and have really effective senior leadership team meetings. So that is the model. And the first thing I'm going to start off with is I want to talk a little bit about the leadership team. Now, some of you in the room may be on the leadership team. Some of you may be one level down. But I just want to speak to a couple of the concepts here. First thing is, does anyone know who this is on the leadership team? And so I'll cut to the chase here. For many entrepreneurially led organizations, we have something that we call the visionary. So this is the entrepreneurial leader that for the most part maybe founded the company. They could be the CEO, but this is the individual within your organization that is going 100 miles an hour, right? And they're always moving forward, but they don't move forward in a straight line. That's just generally what we see when we work with companies. Visionary leaders have lots of ideas. They might have 20 ideas a week. 15 of them might be complete distractions, but 5 of those could change the company's future forever. They've got a deep respect and passion for company culture. They are good at holding court in front of your bigger customers. They're good at raising money. They're good at being the ambassador for the organization. The challenge with visionary leaders sometimes is just the fact that they don't move forward in a straight line. So I do want to ask a question here. Do we have any raging visionary leaders here in this room? So we don't. Do we have any companies that have visionary leaders, whether they're raging or if any of the characteristics of what I described kind of fit your leader, your CEO? Okay, so we got a few. And so I want to speak to this a little bit. The visionary leader is essential. God bless them. If I was leading a company, and I have led companies, I would be more of an integrator. I'm more of an execution person. I'm a more keep the trains running on time. I'd be your general manager. I'd be your president. I'd be your COO. But it's our visionary leaders that really make stuff happen, at least at the grassroots level for young companies, and then as companies kind of grow. And if I had any visionary leaders in here that admitted to being a raging visionary, I would have a hat for them. And the hat has a squirrel on it. So we have some fun with our visionary leaders. They're easily distracted, right? So let me ask the question again. Those of you that have visionary leaders, I've got 2 hats up here. Is anyone interested in, you got to hand it to your visionary leader though. All right, so I got 2 hands up here. Come on up to the stage. And you have to give it to them. I will. And there's got to be a smile, and hopefully that individual smiles back at you. Okay, so that's our visionary leader. Now, what we're looking to do with this system is we're looking to take you forward as a company, and there's something that we call the organizational checkup. I will have a link to the organizational checkup at the end of the presentation. But when we start implementing EOS within organizations, they'll take the organizational checkup, and generally speaking, they'll come back at 20 to 40% strong based on the questions that we've asked. So this is our visual representation of an organization that is 20 to 40% strong. So you've got your visionary leader moving forward. You might have their integrator lockstep with them. That's the arrow that's pointing most towards the front of the room. And then everyone else is just a little bit misaligned, right? And so this system, if you use it with discipline, will take you from this over a period of time to this, and then our end goal is to get you there. And one thing I'm going to read a couple things here for you. There's a book called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. Has anyone ever heard of that book? Okay. So he starts the book this way. So it's not finance, it's not strategy, it's not technology, it's teamwork that remains the ultimate competitive advantage, both because it's so powerful and so rare. A friend of mine, the founder of a company that grew to $1 billion in annual revenue, best expressed the power of teamwork when he once told me, if you could get all the people in an organization rowing in the same direction, you could dominate any industry in any market against any competition at any time. Whenever I repeat that adage to a group of leaders, they immediately nod their heads, but in a desperate sort of way. They seem to grasp the truth of it while simultaneously surrendering to the impossibility of it actually happening. And that is where the optimization of teamwork becomes one of the primary issues facing any company. So that's just one little thing I want to leave with you here. We're going to go a little deeper on data, but I just want to leave that with you. And then I'm going to read something else to you. This is something that I read to all my clients when I'm implementing EOS. Just to give you an idea, I've been doing it for about 5 years. I think I'm up to about 300 what we call sessions. So these are full-day sessions with leadership teams. But that is just the absolute tip of the iceberg with regards to this system's been around for about 20 years. With regards to what Gino Wickman's done, Gino Wickman is the author of the book Traction, which is our Bible, if you will, for EOS. And so someone asked Gino about a year ago, I think he's done about 2,500 sessions, and they said, what is the number one clue for success as you take a company down this path? And he replied, he thought about it for a second, he's a pretty passionate guy, and he replied with this email to us, and I share this email with every company that I bring on board to EOS, and I wanted to share it with you as well. So his answer was, you asked me the question, what is the one indicator of success? And it boils down to the leadership team. Okay, that is the one indicator of success. Strong leadership teams have a rock star in every seat. They have the right structure with all the right people in the right seats. They are proud of each person at the leadership table. Number 2, they are 100% on the same page. The entire leadership team is aligned around the vision and the plan to achieve it 100%. Number 3, they speak one language. So one operating system, one set of words. What are the words they use to plan, meet, measure, prioritize, solve issues, systemize, communicate, manage, and lead? Now that is a call out to EOS. EOS is a methodology, it's a language for running a business. There are other ones out there, and all I say to entrepreneurs and leaders within organizations is pick one, like just pick something, right? So that when you're talking to each other, you're all speaking the same language. Prior to becoming a CEO, I was, most of my career actually, I was a VP of sales. And I'd have pretty large sales teams, 15 to 20 enterprise sales reps, a bunch of inside salespeople, marketing folks and whatnot. And the very first thing, and I was in high tech, so every 3 years something changed. We got acquired, or maybe we were a smoking hole in the ground. But I always, every 3 or 4 years, I would sign on with a new company. And the very first thing that I would do after a couple of experiences was I would look at the CEO when he was putting the offer down or verbalizing what the offer would look like for me, is I would say to him, listen, I need you to set some money aside. This offer looks great. I need you to set some money aside for a sales methodology training course, right? Whether it's in our world, it was Sandler, Miller Hyman, Bosworth, like there's all sorts of ones out there. But I need you to set some money aside, because first thing I do as a sales leader is I will take my salespeople, we'll all take the course together, and then we're all speaking the same language when we're doing pipeline reviews on where exactly the deal sits in the pipeline. So that language thing is pretty important. Number 4, they are open and honest. They say what needs to be said when it needs to be said. They never hold back, because everything you run into is just an issue, and I'll get into that when we talk a little bit further. Number 5, they are fanatical about resolution. They relentlessly attack the issue, not the person. and they won't rest until it's solved. They actually get a high from solving issues. Number 6, they treat each other with respect. They ignore hierarchy and listen to each other as equals. No one is intimidated or intimidating. And then number 7, love. Yep, you heard me right. Strong leadership teams love working together. They love the employees. They love their business. They love their clients. They love their product or service. Each decision is made from a place of love, not fear, and always with the greater good in mind. The greater good, whenever we get together in a facilitation session, I have a room in Bell's Corners. It's kind of purpose-built for facilitation, and I've decided not to go too corporate or too slogany when you walk in the room, but I do have something on the wall, and it's like for the greater good. I just want to remind everyone, when we're talking about the business, when we're talking about the issues, it's for the greater good of the business. So that is just something I wanted to share with you. Hopefully you got some value from it. Think about that list. There's 7 things. If anyone wants that list from me afterwards, just send me a note. I got my business cards up here. And I'm happy to share it with you. And you might be 4 for 7, you might be 7 for 7, you might be 2 for 7, but this is kind of what you want to aspire to. So let's do a quick review on what we talked about last year, and I'm just going to do this real quick. So last year was a bit of a deep dive on people, and the way we look at people within an organization is really 2 criteria. You want to have the right people in the right seats. So the right people are people that live and breathe your core values. These are people that would just run through the wall for the business utilizing those core values. They're not going to make stupid decisions. They're not going to say yes blindly, but they're good company people and they identify with your core values. And for the most part, they exhibit those core values most of the time. Right seats has to do, can they actually execute? And we're not going to get into that too much today. So when we talk about core values and culture, last year we got into this. We talked about intentional culture. Now, each one of those 6 pies that was in the EOS wheel, we have a kind of a deep dive book on, and today we're going to get into data. But last year it was people. And so we talked about intentional culture. And so there's 4 types of cultures out there. The first one is low on intentionality and not the healthiest, right? So this is a chaotic culture. This is a business that runs 100 miles an hour, but there's really, it's kind of seat of the pants stuff, right? And the challenge associated with a chaotic culture is when it comes to attracting people. So if you're growing, you need to attract people, right? When it comes to attracting people, it's difficult to bring people in, and it's also difficult to retain people because of the chaos, right? And so if you're low in intentionality on values specifically, and if you're not the healthiest, that's what we call a chaotic culture. The next one is a culture that I was somewhat guilty of running when I was a VP of sales for tech startups. That's a command and control culture. So the good news is you're very intentional, but you can be a little bit of a tyrant at times, right? And so what we're doing is we're cracking the whip, we're making sure process is followed, we're making sure people are adhering to our core values. But the challenge with that is over a 2 to 3 year period. Now, luckily, my environment changed every 2 or 3 years because we were high tech. But the challenge with that is people start running scared, okay? And you get people leaving for that reason. They're always watching their back. And it becomes difficult to bring people into that organization as well, right? Because they hear about it on the street. So that's a command and control culture. And the way we dealt with it, we kind of knew we were a bit of a meat grinder. But we were a meat grinder by design because we had to, if we wanted that next tranche of funding, we had to execute, we had to bring in these deals, we had to show the investors what they needed to see. And so the way we dealt with it is we just paid more when we'd bring people in. And that's how we got people into the door, but they knew what they were getting into. And not every company can afford to do that, right? So that was one thing that we talked about. We also talked about the happy accident. So the happy accident is a scenario where you've got a kind of a smaller organization, maybe a smaller leadership team. This is a group of people that know each other, they trust each other, they've been working with each other for years, okay? They may have gone to school with each other. I'm working with a company right now where 4 of the members of the leadership team, they all went to high school together, and 2 ended up becoming D1 golfers down in the US. They came back and they created a commercial real estate organization, and they're a tight team. Like, there's very little dysfunction within that organization at the leadership team level. The challenge ends up becoming, again, as you're growing and scaling your business, as you're bringing people in, is you've got a clique. This is a clique. This is kind of culty, right? And so people see that. They sense that they're not part of the gang, right? And it'll be harder for you to attract people as you grow and scale your business. And then the last area is intentional culture. So that is a culture that's highly intentional and very healthy. And at the foundation of an intentional culture is core values. So like, that was what I went into last year. We talked about core values, how important they are. What are the values traps that you run into? If you have core values on a wall right now, that's great, but there's all sorts of things that may challenge those core values, and we got into the weeds on that last year. Not going to get into that today, but I guess the main message for those of you, most of you weren't here last year, is if you don't have core values, go out and get 3 to 5 core values. And when I say go out and get, that's probably the wrong description, because your core values exist. They're already within your organization, but identify what they are, make sure that you live and breathe them, and let's make sure that you hire, fire, review, reward, and recognize your people primarily on core value alignment. So that was the message last time. Okay, so let's get into data. So with regards to data, I always like to put this quote up, right? So if we have data, let's look at the data. If all we have are opinions, let's go with mine. So the message here is we have, in this scenario, we have a visionary leader who's kind of a larger than life personality. And there's probably some really good people on the leadership team that are trying to make some things happen, but they're getting overpowered on a pretty regular basis. And in this scenario, it's because they don't have the information. They don't have the data to kind of back up their opinions. And so this is a challenge that you're going to run into if you don't have the data. Now, luckily, data 20, 30 years ago was pretty hard to get. Some of you may be awash with data. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and help you get down to the root of what's really important in scorecarding. So let's keep on moving. Book called Data. It actually just came out. I just got my Amazon shipment a couple days ago. I have 2 copies, so we'll figure out a way to get these 2 out to the floor if people are interested. But this will go real deep. I'm touching on elements of this today, but just an interesting read and something good to pick up on Audible or through Amazon if you don't get it from me today. So let's talk about the language associated with data. So if you're not familiar, these are some of the buzzwords that are out there, right? So we got KPIs, key performance indicators. We have objectives and key results. We have performance metrics, quantifiable objectives, metrics, data, measures, and measurables. At the end of the day, they're all kind of the same, right? And so going back to this language, yes, there are nuances here, but generally speaking, they're all kind of the same. So what we ask our companies is to just pick one. Just pick something, right? When you're talking about data, we use the term measurable. So moving forward in this presentation, I'm going to be speaking to measurables, but there's all sorts of jargon out there, and there's all sorts of books on data as well. By the way, next door, they're running a real deep dive on data, 8.0, I'm not sure if you're familiar with them. They're actually a former EOS client of mine. Great crew. And I am a data geek. I love data. But we're gonna keep it as simple as possible. So let's simplify. Today we're talking about scorecarding. So scorecarding is a handful of numbers that you can tell at a glance how your business is doing. So I just want to arm you with the information that will help you identify, frankly, it's 5 to 15 numbers at the senior leadership table. And then as you move down through the organization, every individual within your company should have a number or two, even the person that sweeps the floor, right? But it shouldn't be a bunch. It should be a couple of numbers that they look at, and we'd like you to look at them every week. And I'll get into some of the reasons for that a little bit later. So what happens when your business is on track? By the way, I love simple presentations. I love simple messages. EOS is all about simplicity. I looked at my slide deck this morning and there were 43 slides. So the good news is I took out all the fancy slide builds. So you're going to see all the bullets pop up right away as opposed to ding, 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 ding across the screen. So what happens when your business is on track? Well, you relax. You start thinking proactively. You start thinking strategically. You have time to solve problems. You're able to be patient. And patient, the example might be you lose a key employee, you lose your VP of sales, you lose your estimator, and you're able to take the time to find the right person for your organization as opposed to rushing to get the first resume that comes in the door, right? And then, yeah, of course, sometimes you go golfing. So when it's not on track, you're stressed, you're firefighting, there's infighting that occurs, there's rash decisions that are made, there's downward pricing pressure, and you're skipping steps, right? And so these are some of the challenges associated with when your business is not on track. Now, what scorecarding is, what we aim to do with scorecarding, is we try and give you at least a 6 to 13 week warning that stuff are going off the rails, right? And so if we knew ahead of time that we need to get tactical, wouldn't things be a little bit easier, right? And so that's what we're trying to do with our scorecarding approach. So a couple of truths here. What gets measured gets done. Managing metrics saves time. A scorecard gives you a pulse and the ability to predict your business. You must inspect what you expect, and people respect what you inspect. Now I'm going to read something else. Sorry for reading stuff here, gang. But this is a pretty cool little story. Charles Schwab, you may be familiar with Charles Schwab, the investment company, but there was another Charles Schwab back in the day in the 20s. He was a steel executive, so completely different person. And he worked for Andrew Carnegie. So Andrew Carnegie hired Charles Schwab to run U.S. Steel in 1921. Paid him $1 million a year. In 1921. That was $3,000 per day, when people who made $50 per week were considered well off. He was not hired because he knew more about steel than anyone else. Carnegie hired him because he's a genius at dealing with people. There was a book written about Mr. Schwab back in 1912 entitled Succeeding with What You Have. I'd like to pull a short excerpt from the book that gives a great example of how Mr. Schwab was able to motivate his people to accomplish more without threats, condemnation, fear, criticism, intimidation, or pressure. When asked for the secret of his success in the steel industry, Charles Schwab always talked about making the most of what you have, using praise, not criticism, giving liberal bonuses for work well done. And as he stated, appealing to the American spirit of conquest in my men, the spirit of doing things better than anyone has ever done them before. He liked to tell this story about how he handled an unproductive steel mill. He said he had a mill manager who was finely educated, thoroughly capable, and master of every detail of the business. But he seemed unable to inspire his men to do their best. Mr. Schwab asked him one day, "How is it that a man as able as you cannot make this mill turn out what it should?" "I don't know. I've coaxed the men, I've pushed them, and I've sworn at them. I've done everything in my power, yet they will not produce." The night production supervisor and his team could never produce as much steel as the day production team, ever. And the day team wasn't doing that well either. It was a few minutes before night production crew was to arrive, so Mr. Schwab asked the day supervisor how many batches of steel his team produced that day. The supervisor replied 6. Mr. Schwab asked for some chalk, and in the front entrance of the steel mill, where everyone had to walk past to enter the steel mill, he wrote a giant 6 and then walked away without saying anything. When the night shift came in and they all saw the 6, they asked about it. They were told that the big boss was in here today and asked how many batches of steel had been produced on the day shift, and then he chalked down the big 6. The next morning when the day shift showed up, they saw that the 6 had been rubbed out and a big 7 was written instead. The night shift had beaten them, something they had never done before, and also had thrown down a challenge at the same time. When the day shift saw the 7, boy, did things start happening. By the end of their shift, the 7 was rubbed out and a 10 written in its place, something that they had never done before. No one was coaxed, pushed, cursed, intimidated, yelled at, threatened, nor was fear used to get them to produce more. The simple 6 was written where all could see, and things like competition, resourcefulness, teamwork, rivalry, ingenuity, maximum effort, determination, and pride kicked in. So, kind of a neat story, and so people respect what you inspect. You can have accountability in a culture that's high trust and healthy. We're not talking about micromanagement here. Like, this is not about, I have a son who's a high-tech sales guy, and he has to do 100 calls a day. It's a meat grinder. This is not what that's about, right? But you need to have that accountability, and the culture can still be high trust. A scorecard requires hard work, discipline, and consistency. You're going to have different versions of the scorecard. What we like to do is we just like to get people started on 5 to 15 numbers. We call that version 1.0. 6 months later, you're going to look at those numbers and you say, those aren't the right numbers. And then you go 2.0, and then over a period of time, you're going to have the right pulse for your business. And then you got to own your numbers. So every single person that's got a number has to own it. They have to put it into the system. There's a software application that we use to manage EOS. They put it into the system in advance of the level 10 meeting, and they got to own the numbers. So when the number's off track, the individual that's running the meeting looks at the person whose number's off track, and we're not going to discuss why it's off track in great detail because we need to run through our scorecard. We have about 5 minutes for our scorecard in our meeting. But they need to be able to identify whether or not we need to issue this thing, whether we need to problem solve this thing, or maybe productivity's down because it's between Christmas and New Year's, or there's some sort of seasonality that's happening. So those are the 7 truths. Now I need to familiarize you with the accountability chart. We talked about this last year. I'm going to go at this pretty quick. So when I work with a company, we build something called the accountability chart. It's not an org chart. I'll work with the leadership team and I'll say, okay, we're going to go structure first, people second. Let's burn this thing to the ground. Let's build it back up based on major functions within the organization. So we start at the bottom. This is a generic example. Construction might have, BD, pre-construction, construction, project management, finance. Everyone's a little different, but what are the major functions within our business? And we can only have one person accountable for each function. If you have multiple people accountable for that function, no one's accountable, right? So that's an exercise that we go through. And then we speak to the visionary integrator dynamic. So the visionary I've talked to you about earlier, this is our entrepreneurial leader. That visionary, only 5% of people that are true visionaries can act as a visionary and an integrator. It's just not in their DNA, right? And so what we want to do is we want to make sure that we've got someone that's filling the integrator role. So this is someone that is really good at keeping the trains running on time. They're a little bit more logical, a little bit less passionate. They are a little bit of a yin to the visionary's yang, but they're partners, right? And there's a healthy friction between these two individuals. So we go through the exercise. Usually it's clear as day who our visionary is. And then we identify, maybe it's clear who our integrator is, or we identify someone in the organization that can step up, or maybe we identify a need to bring someone into the organization to act as that integrator. So those are 5 major functions in a kind of a generic example. And so let's move on to scorecarding. So at the senior leadership team level, and we start with the senior leadership team and everything cascades down from there. A quick note, by the way, on this one here, the accountability chart. When I'm working with companies, I also talk about the owner's box. So the owner's box kind of hovers above this, right? And so you might have an owner or a majority owner or a pretty major owner that is on the leadership team. But in other scenarios, you may have an owner that's in and out, and they're not really involved in the day-to-day management of the organization, and that's where we have a bit of a hard conversation to say, listen, are you an owner, or are you on the leadership team, or are you both? And if you're on the leadership team, my ask as an EOS implementer, if this system's going to work well for you, is I need you to be in our weekly L10s. I can't have you in Florida 6 months out of the year. If you're in Florida 6 months of the year, at the very least, I need you dialing into that thing, right? So you need to tell me whether you're an owner, or you're on the senior leadership team, or if you're both. And if you're both, I need you to step up if you're a little disengaged, and or if you're coming in like a seagull, shitting all over everything and then flying away, right? So that's a real frank conversation that I have with folks when I'm working with them. So scorecarding, handful of numbers, 5 to 15 at the senior leadership team level. Each function has a couple of numbers. So marketing and sales, 3, 4 numbers. Operations, 3 or 4 numbers. Finance might have a couple of numbers. And then the visionary and the integrator, if the visionary is raising money, or if it's an important strategic initiative, let's say we're a $100 million business and we get 80 million from 7 clients, and that visionary has a great relationship with those 7 clients, and we need him to be intentional about getting in front of those 7 clients. Maybe there's a scorecard item on that. But basically, that's kind of where we're at. So criteria for a scorecard. Leading indicators, ideally. So they should be activity-based. They shouldn't be the output. So they shouldn't be sales. They should be the proposals or the presentations or the proof of concepts or the surveys or the conversations that lead to the sales. So it has to be activity-based. Weekly review. Monthly and quarterly are the exceptions. So what I'm getting at here is when we build a scorecard, there's a tendency, and I was guilty of this as well as a VP of sales, we would always hockey stick at the end of a quarter. The challenge associated with that is you're going to miss your number way too late, right? If the assumption is you're going to hockey stick at the end of the quarter. And so we want to identify these numbers on a weekly basis. And yes, there might be the odd monthly number, there might be the odd quarterly number. We're going to go with our functions first. So primary functions first. And if we fill up the scorecard with just our primary functions and our visionary and integrator really don't have any special projects, then let's just vector in on the major functions. And again, if you've got 7 major functions, that scorecard fills up pretty quick. So visionary, if they're raising money, talking to big clients, educating the market. In high tech, we would have our visionary talk to analysts all the time. So we'd scorecard that individual on talking to analysts. Integrator is often tasked with being the project manager of rolling out an ERP application, making sure it's successful anyways, or a new thing, right? Our integrators are really good at special projects, right? And so they may have a scorecard number or 2, but let's start with the primary function. Now I've got some examples here for you, but the first thing I always ask when I'm facilitating scorecarding is what do you want? What do you want from your business, right? So if you're running sales, or if you're running estimating, or if you're running operations, I'd like you to boil it down to 2 or 3 things. Like, what do you want from your business within the business, right? Like, what is success to you? Now, at the company level, most companies want to get new customers. They want to get orders from existing customers. They want to have customers happy. They want to have employees happy. They want to serve customers profitably. And they want to generate and have cash. So those are kind of the 6 things that most companies want. And from these 6 things, you could probably build a pretty busy scorecard pretty quickly, right? And so the key is when you build that scorecard, how do you narrow it right down to 2 or 3 numbers? So when we talk about getting what you want, so let's talk about sales in this scenario, or getting new clients. I'd like to work backwards, right? So in my business, I know, and it's been proven, that for every 4 CEOs that express interest in having this system in place, and perhaps hiring someone like me to facilitate it. For every 4, I will usually get 2 to something that we call the 90-minute meeting. The 90-minute meeting is, it's not a sales pitch, but it's kind of a socialization to the leadership team of what this system's all about. Of every 2 companies that we get to the 90-minute meeting, we get 1 client signing on to have EOS implemented with someone like myself, right? We call it 4-2-1. So that, we know that, it's been proven. So you yourself, if you haven't done the math, right? So just make sure you go through the exercise to identify for, if you want 1 new client a month, what does that mean? Well, we've got to present 2 proposals a month, which means we need to create 2 proposals a month, which means we need to do 4 needs assessments a month. And that is our first opportunity to create a weekly scorecard item that is weekly, right? So if it's 4 a month, that's 1 a week. You call this a survey. You can call this a scope exercise, whatever you'd want to call it. So that is a scorecard candidate. Going further back on the activity, in order to do that, we need to have 2 first meetings a week, 4 contacts a week, and then 8 prospects added to our hunt list a week, right? So that this sort of fictitious example, they've done the math. And so ideal scenario, you know, maybe we just go with the very first one, right? Add target prospect to list. And when we say target prospect, what that means is we're not just adding any name to the list. Like this prospect fits the criteria that we've identified in our ideal best fit customer scenario. In our ideal best fit customer scenario, maybe one of our factors is they need to have a funded project, right? And so we're going through this exercise, and so we're adding 8 per week, but we all know what that means. We all as a leadership team know what that means, and we're not just firing names in there. And if we feel that's an activity that makes sense, then that's what we're scorecarding. Just stick to that one, right? Keep it as simple as possible. So I've got some examples here for you on business development. So using that sales and marketing BD kind of bucket, these are examples. You know your business, right? You know what's important from an activity perspective, what will make success happen. But we've got new target market fit investor conversations. This is just my company. I'm thinking about, I got recency bias. I was with them last week. They're a commercial real estate organization, construction company that is raising money. They raise funds. They need to raise $10 million this year. And so the CEO, their ideal best fit target market person is someone that has $1 million that they're willing to invest outside of traditional means, right? So that is an ideal scenario. Will they talk to people with 50K, 100K, 250K? Yes, right? Of course they will. But this is what's really going to move the needle for them. So we've added this to their scorecard. So he essentially needs to talk to someone with $1 million that they're willing to invest a week, 1 a week. That's this example. Prime contractor conversations. So if you're a sub and you deal with primes, maybe you're tracking that. Maybe you're taking it a step further. Prime contractor project specific. So you're only counting it if you're talking to a prime, but you're talking to them about a specific project. Biddable tenders next 3 months by number. Biddable tenders next 3 months by dollar value. Tier 1 project visibility, number of projects, and then we could go by dollar value. Dollar value of bids outstanding, so you've submitted the bid. It's not work on hand. Work on hand is potentially a scorecard item as well, but this is the stuff that's out there in the ether that you've submitted proposals to. And then win percentage. Now that's a bit of a lagging indicator, okay, but that does show up on some folks' scorecards. So that's BD. Those are some examples. Again, you know your business. Now for operations, I was having fun yesterday getting ready for this, and I was thinking about AI. I'm not a big AI guy. Maybe I am now after this. So I just said, can you give me 10 leading indicator KPIs for construction operations only? And it comes back 5 seconds later, it says, got it. Would you like it in an Excel spreadsheet? So I said, sure. And it came back with this, right? So I'm not going to read all these out, but this is something that you can do as you're developing your scorecard for each one of your major functions. Hop into AI, ask them the question. You're probably going to get more than what you need, and then it'll help you identify your 2 or 3 or 4 numbers that you're going to be tracking. And what was cool here is it gave me the KPIs, but it also gave me the definition, the unit of measure. Now what you would need to do is you'd need to identify what's important for you on a weekly basis, right? So if we go to the toolbox talk attendance rate, only you know what that attendance rate should be, 80%, 90%, 100%, whatever that is, right? And anytime it's less than 80%, it should show up red on your scorecard. Then I asked, I was thinking about estimating. I have a couple of companies that are struggling with estimating right now. I said, okay, ChatGPT, I know estimating is a big one. Can you do that up in a slide for me? I wanted this, just do the slide for me. And this one took about 2 minutes. It was thinking, and then it produced this slide. I thought that was pretty cool. So just know that that's out for you, right? These may or may not be relevant to your business or how you look at estimating, but this is something that AI is going to help bring to the table for you that'll make this whole exercise that much more efficient. And then last, finance and admin. So finance and admin, pretty straightforward, but the key here is I don't want you choosing all of these. I want you to choose 2 or 3 of these, right? And these may not be the ones, but what's our burn rate? In high-tech world, it was always how many months do we have left at full burn with no sales? Sometimes it'd be down to 2 months. We'd all be sitting around the leadership team table really worried. And then it would go up to 2 years, right? That could be something you're tracking, cash in the bank, line of credit status. If you've got a receivables issue, maybe you're going to track that for a little while. AP, errors, profitability, employee sat, employee sick days, open positions. Now, I don't have health and safety here. Health and safety is a big part of a lot of the companies I work with. But if health and safety is its own function, you might have a couple there. You saw the toolbox one, right? That was in the operations bucket. So maybe health and safety is in ops. Maybe it's in finance and admin. But just know that you should be tracking a couple. And it could be as simple as number of accidents last week has to be less than or equal to 0, right? Or near misses, however you track it. So 6 fundamentals. Review weekly with your leadership team. 5 to 15 numbers. Someone's accountable for each measurable. There's a goal for each measurable. If the goal is not hit, you issue it. So anything in the red, generally speaking, your default should be to, we call it drop it down, and I'll get into that in the L10 meeting. Drop it down to your issues list. If you know why it's in the red and you're not worried about it, let's say you always want to have a $100,000 line of credit available to you and you're at 98K. Okay, it's red, but is it really an issue? I don't want you creating issues out of things that aren't necessarily issues. 13 weeks at a glance, patterns and trends. So you want to look at your scorecard. The scorecard has to give you a 13-week window because that's where things are going to scream off the page at you. Now, I'm going to get into traction because this is how it comes together from a scorecarding perspective. So we have something called the Level 10 meeting. And the Level 10 meeting is called that because if you ask most managers, executives, senior leadership team members to rate their meeting effectiveness on a scale of 1 to 10, the average score will be 4. If you have great weekly leadership team meetings, maybe all you need to do is integrate the scorecard if you don't have it. But I'm going to teach you a meeting real quick that we have. And our goal is to get you up to a 9 or a 10. I will also get eye rolling, too many meetings that could have been emails, all that kind of stuff. But we need to agree as a leadership team that we need to get together to talk about the business. Like that is, it's actually a non-negotiable thing. Like that's how problems get solved. That's how consensus, that's how we can make decisions, all that kind of stuff. So we just need to make that time that we get together really, really effective. So we have this rule. It's The L10 has to be the same day, same time, start on time, end on time, and always the same agenda. And the philosophy at the leadership team level has to be, the only reason I miss an L10 is if I'm off on vacation or if it's a funeral of mine. So we have some fun with that one, right? And I have leadership teams that are running L10s, off hours, off days, but they're very, very, if this system's gonna work for them, they're very, very structured on this meeting. So we start off the meeting with good news. Everyone shares personal good news, business good news. There's some psychology there. One is you get to know your people better. Two is the people that were coming to the meeting that were going to be a passenger are now forced to lean forward and contribute right off the top. Then we get into our scorecards. So we have our scorecards set up. Here it is. This is an example. So we have our scorecard set up. I have a software application that I highly recommend, but you can do this on spreadsheets. You can do this on any sort of project management software that you really like. But we've got our numbers, and then we've got 13 weeks at a glance. Anything that is in the red becomes an issue, or perhaps, like in the example I gave you on Christmas, maybe it's not a big issue today, but I'll tell you what, if you see it next week, or if you see it 3 weeks in a row, you got to be IDSing that. The other thing is maybe it's the wrong measure, right? If it's in the red for 7 weeks in a row, and no one's particularly worried about it, maybe it's not a scorecard item, right? Or maybe the threshold is the wrong one. So let me go back to the L10, just conclude this real quick. So then we get into, so scorecarding, by the way, most of my companies are down to 2 minutes. They just rip through it. All the information's pre-populated. Any issues, we add it to the list. Next. ROC review, these are your 90-day goals. We're not going to get into ROCs today, but these are, everyone's got 3 to 7 specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound goals for the next 90 days. Everyone checks in on them. They're either on track, they're off track, or they're complete. 5 minutes. Anything that's off track, down to the issues list. Customer and employee headlines. Are your people happy? Are your customers happy? You were at the Sens game last week and you ran into Taggart and they're really happy with what you've done on this project, right? All that stuff that you like to share, okay? Customer and employee headlines. I always say to my clients, make sure you remind yourself, put a little reminder in your calendar on headlines because you will forget those little headlines that you want to share. Make sure you remind yourself what the headlines are. To-do list, these are all the actions that we took last week on resolving issues. Issues list. Now we've got an issues list. We may have created 2 or 3 from our scorecard, maybe 1 or 2 on ROCs, and there might have been 5 or 6 sitting there waiting for us, right? And so we're not going to start at the top of the list and work our way down. We're going to prioritize. So we need to identify what our number 1 issue is, what our number 2 issue is, what our number 3 issue is, shuffle the deck, attack number 1 first. Example I always like to give here is, we always like to go root cause, okay? So I wouldn't say I struggle with my weight, but I go up and down a bit, right? I was 227 about a year and a half ago. I'm probably 205 now, probably 15 pounds heavier than I need to be. And so my issue is weight. What's a root cause? Well, diet, exercise, sleep, water. And then I got to attack each one, right? I am drinking lots of water. I'm getting decent sleep. Okay, it's these 2 things. What do I do here, right? Like with regards to exercise, I just moved to Calabogie. My Peloton is in storage. I haven't dusted it off for 6 months. So now my action plan there is to get back on the Peloton, stick it in an area where I will use it, and then I got to eat better, right? So that's a real simple example of root cause, IDS. But so your issue might be you're missing your numbers, right? It's because maybe you didn't do a marketing campaign, you lost a key salesperson, you lost a key account. Like, we need to IDS those root causes. So that's what IDSing is. And then we conclude. Everyone rates the meeting on a scale of 1 to 10. Anything less than an 8, give a reason. It becomes self-correcting over a period of time. You'll start out, most of my companies start out at 6s and 7s because they have high expectations coming out of the focus day. But then over a period of time, it just sort of sneaks up. So questions to ask, and I'm coming to an end here. Does anyone have to bolt out of here right at 11? Okay, so give me another 5 minutes, or sorry, after 12. Give me another 5 minutes. So questions to ask. So yes, you can use AI. Yes, there's lots of examples of scorecard items. Only you know your business. But here's some questions. If I'm facilitating this with the leadership team, one question is, how do I know if I had a good week last week, right? So I'll look at the executive and I'll say, like, how do you know you had a good week? Like, how do you know, right? And so they might come up with a couple of numbers that way. Another one is, what are your panic numbers, right? So if this is off track, when are you panicking? And the analogy is always a car, right? Like, how many things are operating in your car? Like, how many moving parts are in your car? And you're not really worried about too much until your oil light or your engine light goes off. And then you're pulling over the side of the road. So that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for your panic numbers. This one's fun. So you have 6 weeks of bank vacation. You're in charge of a pretty important function within the organization. You've booked 4 weeks, your husband or wife, and you want to take some time off, but it's on you if the wheels fall off the bus of your department, right? It's your department. So you want to take those 4 weeks. You're gonna assess at the end of every week whether or not you can continue your vacation, right? Someone's going to come into your hotel room with a sheet of paper with 3 numbers on it on Friday. Just by looking at those 3 numbers, you can tell your husband or wife if you can extend that vacation, right? Or whether you need to get back into the office. So those are just some fun exercises that we facilitate just to get people thinking about what really matters. So some final thoughts. Scorecards do evolve. I always, when in the focus day with clients, I always just say, let's just get started. Like, let's get 5, 6 numbers up on the board. Guaranteed it's going to evolve, 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. Forget perfection, just get started. Have that 13-week window. AI can help. You can go deep on data. Ado's next door, they're awesome. There's another company that I work with from an EOS perspective. Actually, I worked with the founder when he was with another company called Apello. I don't know if they're here today. But like, there's all sorts of ways to take data to the next level. We're not talking about data mining here. We're talking about just the basics, right? And there's tools that are available. So this is the software application that I've been talking about. I'm not going to demo it or show it to you, but just know that everything we do in EOS will run on a SaaS platform, so you can have it up on your big screen. If you have some virtual people, you can run through the meeting. It'll run through the meeting with timings. Your scorecard will pop up at the appropriate time. Your rocks will pop up at the appropriate time. Your vision traction organizer, which is your 2-page business plan, will pop up at your convenience. So have a look at that if you're considering an EOS implementation. By the way, well over half of the companies, there's about 200,000 companies running EOS, well over half have self-implemented EOS. Very viable way to get this done. But I highly recommend this thing because it's in the grand scheme of things, it's not very expensive. And it's just a good repository. Or use the software that you're comfortable with. The organizational checkup, at the beginning I was talking about all the arrows going in different directions. If you go on the EOS website, what I recommend to leadership teams is CEO takes it, all the senior leadership team takes it, and then identify 4 or 5 key employees below, okay? Have them all take it. You're going to get an aggregate score, and then you'll have an individual score, and more often than not, the CEO visionary, everything's clear as day to him or her. But then you'll start seeing things fade as you kind of go down, and that's what this system's all about. It's not so much about developing the answers to those 8 questions. I could ask a visionary the answers to those 8 questions, and he or she would pop them out, right, without even thinking. It's, does everyone else agree? Is there consensus? Is there alignment? Do they identify? So the org checkup, and then I'm doing a workshop. There's cards on your chairs. I'm doing a workshop at the Brook Street. I believe it's May 9th. I do one every spring after the OCA. If you are interested, you can register through the website. It'll be a 2 to 3 hour deep dive on EOS. There'll be workbooks. I will leave you with tangible value. My goal is to educate you. If you call me up afterwards and want to implement this thing, perfect. but that's not the real motivation of doing this. I'm kind of like a believer. Like it's just something I've seen work with a lot of companies, and I want to get the word out. In Ottawa, for the last 5 years, I've been the only implementer of this system. We've had some folks from Montreal and Toronto come in, but we've just added someone, so we're building capability here in town. And with that, we're right up at 12 o'clock. Are there any questions? I'm here. I have some books. Okay, I've got 2 of the data books, and I've got 4 of the traction books. A question gets a book. You get to choose if you're early. Go for it.
I want a book.
Gotta have a question if there's. Yeah. Think about it. I'll come back to you.
How difficult is it to implement something like this when you've got staff that have been with you for like 25 years and everything? We love this strategy. So how difficult is it to bring this new concept to your staff, ones that have been there for?
It's a journey. It starts at the top down. So the first thing that I focus in on is the CEO and the leadership team. As the leadership team goes, so goes the rest of the organization. So if I can get them ascribing to this thing, and by the way, I'm never forcing it, right? I've done 50 implementations. I've had 4 die on the vine. 46 have worked out. In those scenarios, the common characteristic is 2 or 3 of the leadership team are absolutely committed because they don't like the status quo or something's got to change. Like they feel like they've hit the ceiling, right? And as the leadership team goes, what's going to happen is people won't necessarily go willingly. We have tools. So we have a book called What the Heck is EOS? There's no shortage of books, by the way. I think there's 10 or 11 books in the library. Where we call it rollout, where we get it to the next level. We get them writing rocks and having a scorecard and whatnot. I'll come in and do a brief for them, get them out to a workshop. But over a period of time, I'll tell you what, if at the leadership team they're committed, and there's people within the organization that just aren't buying in, and it's affecting the productivity, you may not have the right person in the right seat. Like it is going to bring anything that's just underneath the surface, I guarantee you will be like, it'll be above the surface in a heartbeat, right? And so it's either a hard conversation where they get on board, and this is not a religion. It's like there's plenty of gray. There's plenty of little areas that we can tweak. There's 1 or 2 or 3 rules that we can't break, but there's flexibility in here, and over a period of time, they'll either come on board. What a great way to... Many people that are 1 or 2 levels down in an organization have no idea what the vision for the company is. This is your way of helping educate them on the vision, see what your goals are, what your rocks are, get them thinking that way, and then they will start understanding how they can contribute to that. But it is a journey, for sure. Most companies, let's say 50 employees-ish, it's about a 2-year journey. All right, so what book do you want? Data? All right, I'll set it aside for you. Yeah.
In your experience, what's the kind of maximum functional size for a leadership team to do this sort of thing?
At the functional level, anytime you get more than 7, that's a span of control issue. I do have one client that's got 8. There's a merger, 2 companies coming together. But their L10s are somewhat unwieldy and their quarterlies are unwieldy, right? And they're starting to recognize that. Ideally, your leadership team consists of 3 to 5 major functions with a visionary and integrator. One thing to keep in mind is you can have a business that runs very well without a visionary. I have a couple of those. They have the integrator. They're a traditional business. This one company I'm thinking of is in the sod business. So they don't need a visionary necessarily. It would be nice to have one, but they're not going to force someone to be the visionary. They have a general manager, that's their integrator, and they run just fine. But 3 to 5 would be an ideal scenario with our VI on top of that. And the VI, by the way, remember when I said You can only have one person accountable for each major function, otherwise no one's accountable. In most small to medium-sized organizations, you will absolutely have a visionary that's also the BD lead, or an integrator that's also the ops lead. That's okay. The key there is they recognize that as they grow and scale the business, they got to bring someone in to take that chair so they can really excel at where they want to excel, which is as an integrator or as a visionary. What book would you like?
Traction.
Traction? All right, I got one set aside for you. Sasha?
You talk about putting in a scorecard like that. You talk about, version 1.0 to version 3.0.
Yep.
What's a realistic timeline to evaluate when you need to go to the next version?
So I would say, we have a saying, scorecards take anywhere from 2 weeks to 6 months. So that's if that answers your question. And then once you're happy with it, you'll be toggling the values as you grow. And or if there's a crisis that emerges, let's say a cash flow crisis or some sort of regional thing, maybe you're going to add a couple things. And anytime you add to a scorecard, we try and get you to take some things away. We just don't want it to become, and I'm the example of this. I've been running on EOS myself for 5 years. I just changed my scorecard. I had 15 numbers, and I thought they were pretty cool. But then I just realized about 10 of them were just not, they were more vanity numbers, right? And really at the end of the day for me, I need to know how many 90s I've got booked. That's our preliminary sales thing. How many session days I have next quarter. How many session days I'm anticipating, because we have an annual spike. We're really busy in December. How many session days I'm anticipating for the year. And then meaningful conversations with CEOs. So I got it down to 4. What book do you want? Data? All right, I got that.
Implementing a POS system.
Yep.
Let's say a really small business. Like I think, if you're a small business, it's the perfect time to implement this type of system because it's a lot more, you're going to get a lot more adaptability for teams to grow over time. But managing data for a scorecard is a little different because no one knows financial investments in the software. How do you recommend kind of addressing that scorecard and gaining that data when you don't have a POS system software? Should you implement one before starting, or should you just grab aggregate data? And then how do you avoid kind of the analysis paralysis where you're just constantly trying to dig data out of an Excel sheet?
Yeah, so it would go right to your functional leaders, even in a small company, right? You might be wearing 3 hats. Your partner might be wearing 1, and then you might have 1 or 2 other key people, right? The key is, let's identify the activity-based leading indicators of what gets you what you want. And then it's that individual's issue. Remember Gino said everything's just an issue? It's their issue to get that data for the L10, right? And whether they do it manually or whether you head down some sort of path where you get data is more readily accessible, let them solve that issue, right? But you need the information. And again, if you vector in on being in the sales game for many, many years, it was always activity creates results. And for us, it was one company I was with, we had to do 30 appointments a week. So it was just appointments, right? And the assumption was they were qualified appointments. You weren't padding your appointments. And then that boils down to integrity and there's other things there too, right? If people are padding their numbers. But on a small leadership team, that's very difficult to do, right? So that'd be my quick answer to that. What book, you got Traction? Yeah. Okay, so, yes, sir.
So my understanding of like the visionary
Yep.
is to lead in the growth or diversification of the company.
Sorry, can you repeat what you just said?
A visionary leader,
Yeah.
right, is to lead in the growth or diversification, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you don't have a visionary leader,
Yeah.
like, and you just have data, how do you, grow your company?
It's the only way to grow a company if you don't have a visionary leader really is organically, doing more with your existing customers within your existing verticals, or you lean heavily on your sales and marketing person. and then they may evolve into your visionary, who knows, right? But that's my quick answer there. The visionary should be always thinking, and you can't have a visionary that's on their way out. Like if they're on their way out, there's got to be a succession plan for that, right? Because generally speaking, this is the individual, this is the entrepreneurial individual like the other thing is they lie in wake at night and they're a little paranoid too, right? They think about icebergs, like what's going to take you out, what are the opportunities. Those are the ways you would grow it. Or you just have some really good, next level folks, and someone may emerge. Traction? Okay. Yes, ma'am?
I'm just wondering, can the LMN meetings be monthly instead of weekly, or at that point are you too late? I'm just thinking,
Yeah.
in my firm, we invoice monthly, so if we want to track our revenue, we have to track it monthly.
Yeah. So my recommendation is, in some scenarios, next level down. So when someone's rolling out EOS to the next level, I'll say to them, listen, you could have at the senior leadership team level, you should be connecting once a week. That is the recommendation. That's the pure answer. Maybe you can't report on your numbers, but you can report on activity, right? And rocks. Check in on your rocks. When you start cascading this down within your organization, going bi-weekly, that's okay. Maybe you do 60 minutes instead of 90. Make sure 2/3 of your time is solving problems. That's the criteria. Monthly, I don't see that often. I don't recommend it. But it could probably work at a really lower level within the organization. But our senior leadership team should be connecting. We call it connecting the circles. They should be connecting the circles once a week, formally.
So the goal for the scorecard would be
Weekly trackable, activity-based things. Even though you can't report on your revenue until the end of the month, there must be things, if you go back to that sort of diagram, there must be some activities that you can report on, that you can talk about in those sessions. Traction? Sorry, I'm out of books, but by all means.
Yeah, it sounds like you have a bit of a startup nature behind you. How do you transition from the startup phase where kind of your senior leadership largely is doing most things?
Yeah.
They're taking on most responsibilities. How do you drill down into getting into kind of like EOS structure when you're still in that kind of startup phase and kind of build the scale? We'll get into that.
So it starts with the accountability chart. So when we build the accountability chart, I didn't get into all the detail, but not only do we identify the major functions, but then we get into the roles and responsibilities. They're not job descriptions, but they're the top 3 to 7 roles and responsibilities for each major function. So we go through that, we identify who's accountable, and in some cases, I did one about 6 months ago, where I had the CEO founder was fundamentally accountable for everything. And that was a light bulb that went off, and that ended up becoming an issue. Like, that's an issue, right? So we got to work through that issue. We're not going to leave here with that solved, but that's an issue. And so over a period of time, first thing he got rid of was finance, okay? He had someone step up within the organization. Next time we got together, we had someone that was accountable representing finance. Now, it is easier said than done because entrepreneurs have a tough time letting go. They just do. Like, that's just human nature, right? We have a tool called Delegate and Elevate. It's just, imagine 4 boxes, right? And what I asked the executive to do is write down everything that you do over, let's say, a 2-week period. Everything from answering the phone, collecting a bill, closing a deal, like everything, okay? You're going to have a list of all the things that you do, and then you're going to stick it into one of the 4 quadrants, right? The bottom right quadrant is stuff that does not give you energy and you're not good at, okay? And then we move over here, stuff that does not give you energy, but you're good at it, right? And then we move up here, stuff that gives you energy and you're good at it. And then up here, it's stuff that gives you energy and you're great at it. It's your passion. This is, And so it's a systematic way of them The bottom right box they need to get rid of. Everything that's written there, they need to delegate that, right? And then they got to move over to the bottom left. The bottom left is the hardest one to give up because it's the stuff that you're good at, like that old saying, you know, if I can do it quicker. Like I could get it off my plate, but I'll just do it quicker, right? Like, no, you need to get that off your plate. So that's an exercise that we go through, delegate and elevate, in one of our quarterly sessions where we get them to start getting rid of stuff. But easier said than done. Entrepreneurs have a tough time letting go, but that needs to happen in order for them to grow and scale their business. Like, there's no way that they're going to grow and scale it without that. Any other questions? Yes?
One issue that I've encountered a lot is visionaries being in silo. You have a lot of departments with a lot of visionaries within those departments.
Yeah.
So I assume there are not the leadership group, but rather departmental level.
Yeah.
And how do you harness that into an integrated type of a vision?
So at the departmental level, the way we look at it is the lead engineer or the lead architect, the lead whatever, the individual that you've identified that you're thinking of, right? That is more of a visionary individual within the department. We're going to ask them to be the integrator of that department, right? And doesn't mean they can't be creative. We're not turning you into a robot. We're not turning you into, we're not trying to hamper your visionary tendencies, right? But let's get the foundational basics done first. And let's get you running L10s. And in employee and customer headlines, instead of employee and customer headlines, maybe this is the 5 minutes where our visionary can share his or her vision of cool things that are coming up and things that they're thinking of. So the L10 that I showed you guys, it's a little bit prescriptive, but that in headline area is where people modify it the most. So this company I was referring to that's raising money, they've now added an agenda item where it's fundraising update, right? And so they're able to share that information. But fundamentally, they do need to understand and recognize that they are the leader of that group, right? And if they're not the leader of that group, then, you know, as long as their scorecard's up to date and their rocks are up to date, then they can just go and be creative. We don't want you to not be creative. But the scorecard items and the rock items, those are the things that really kind of move the sticks for the company, kind of move it forward.
Question. When you refer to the previous table that you were showing,
Yep.
when your scorecard are in red, and that means maybe one of the items you are targeting is not the appropriate one.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe top leaders, they are missing something. Would like a EOS or your organization follow through and assist these like ourselves, we are subcontractors.
Yep.
So how EOS helping us?
Yeah, so I'll show you how we would manage this. So in this scenario, we've got, let's say weekly revenue has been down 2 weeks in a row. Threshold's 84.5. We're sitting at 80 grand, and then 81 grand, right? 2 weeks in a row, it's now an issue. We've decided it's an issue. Now, when we're IDSing, the first thing that we do, this is us as a team. We look at the individual that owns that particular number. And one approach is you ask that individual to state the issue in one sentence. Like what is the real issue, right? So I did this with an insurance company once where life insurance numbers are way down. As a multi-practice, sort of they had home and auto, personal lines, commercial, life, investments. I looked at the individual that is accountable for that number, and I said, what is the real issue here, like in one sentence? And he thought about it for a second, and he said, I just don't believe in it. And what was at the root of that one was a young person, like early 30s. Life insurance was not something that they really felt passionately about or believed in at this point. They themselves, if they had disposable income or income, they were going to put it elsewhere, right? So they fundamentally didn't believe in it. So then we addressed that with some, okay, we need to get you some training to talk about, why this thing is important. And we also got to ask, are you the right person in the right seat, right? So we had some frank conversations from there. So that's one example. Another example is the individual that owns that number. You look at the individual and you say, okay, why is that number below threshold? Well, because we didn't get ABC deal. Why? So we call this the 5 whys, right? Why? We didn't get it because our pricing was too high. Why? Because we didn't do our market analysis and we were pretty comfortable with this client. We thought that they would just renew. Why? And so you get to the root cause of why that is the case, and then you address the root cause. But it's done as a team. At the leadership team level, it's done as a team. And then you take a couple of to-dos and you either make the situation in a 7-day period, you either make the situation better or you solve it once and for all. Ideally, it's the latter, but sometimes things take time. Does that answer your question?
Like at higher scale,
Yeah.
if like the leadership see all this table in red, what's your input helping them?
If the whole table's red or most of it, yeah.
What you see.
There's 2 issues. Either it's the wrong metrics and the wrong thresholds. So if everyone's pretty relaxed in the L10, business seems to be humming along, we're not too worried and everything's red, it's probably the wrong thresholds and the wrong metrics, right? Because they know deep in their stomach if business is in trouble. The other one is the business is in trouble, right? And so now the issue is, we see for the last 10 weeks that we've been in the red, there's a storm a-brewing. What are we going to do to deal with this storm? Like what sort of cost-cutting measures? Do we need to talk layoffs? Do we need, that ends up becoming the issue. And then you got to IDS that thing, right? Maybe this is an opportunity for you to clean up, your organization a little bit. In high tech, this is something that we'd hated layoffs. But it would always be an opportunity to clean it up a little bit, clean the company. So it's either they're the wrong numbers, or there's a storm brewing and you got to take action there. And then maybe the precursor to all of that is if everyone comes into the L10 with a pit in their stomach and they know all the numbers are red, you got to go through each one of those things and you got to fix them. You just have to. Otherwise, you're in that third scenario.
Thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure.